What if I told you that in the middle of America, 7 years after a zombie plague wiped out nearly 90% of the population, 2 children were still alive, thriving, inside a deserted suburban home? How could kids, barely old enough to ride a bicycle, survive when trained soldiers and armed adults had already fallen? And here's the most chilling question of all. Were they truly human, or something far more terrifying? Something science never intended to exist? Tonight, we step into the forgotten suburbs of Pennsylvania, where silence hides secrets, and survival is paid for in blood. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow behind the sliding glass doors, carries a story that blurs the line between innocence and horror. These children are not just survivors, they are the keepers of a secret that could decide the future of humankind itself. Stay with me until the very end, because every single detail will send shivers down your spine and make you question what it truly means to be alive. And if you love exploring the hidden corners of the past and the dark truths of human survival, give me a like, hit subscribe, and share this video so I have the motivation to bring you even more haunting stories. Shall we begin? When I first read the police archives about the abandoned suburb of Pine Hollow, Pennsylvania, one detail made my skin crawl. Several motion-activated cameras, set up by National Guard patrols, kept triggering in the dead of night. The footage didn't show zombies crashing through windows, or gangs of raiders prowling the street. Instead, it captured 2 small children, barefoot, laughing, playing in a driveway as if the end of the world had never happened. 7 years into the outbreak, that was impossible. Adults with weapons, training, and stockpiles had vanished. Yet these 2, later identified as Ethan and his younger sister Lily, remained. Investigators found toys scattered across the living room floor, hand-drawn pictures taped to the fridge, even birthday candles burned down halfway. To me, it felt haunting, like a ghost house where childhood refused to die. Some forensic teams swore they found tiny footprints in the dust, alongside streaks of dried blood leading toward the sliding glass doors. On one shattered pane, claw marks etched deep into the frame matched no known animal. Survivors who passed nearby claimed they heard giggles at midnight, followed by the unmistakable drag of zombie feet against the asphalt. Was it imagination, or proof that the children were playing their dangerous game under the watchful eyes of the dead? Personally, I can't shake the feeling that what kept Ethan and Lily alive wasn't just luck.
Do you see that?
There's a discipline in the way every window was barricaded, every trap in the yard reset with precision. It's far more than what an ordinary 12-year-old could manage. And that, for me, is where the horror really begins. Innocence layered over something darker. Something that learned to adapt when the rest of the world collapsed. But the strangest part is this: while the cameras show the children smiling and skipping rope, the audio sometimes picked up whispers, too deep and guttural to belong to them, almost as if someone, or something, else was sharing the house. And that leads us to the question no one dares to answer. Who really lived inside that silent villa? Because the moment strangers came knocking, the truth began to bleed through. Let's move into that next chapter. The night unwanted guests arrived at Pine Hollow. Not long after those eerie camera clips of Ethan and Lily surfaced, another piece of evidence appeared, this time from the dash cam of a rusted pickup truck. The footage shows a couple, Rick and Marlene, pulling up to the cul-de-sac where the children lived. They step out, cautious but curious, and you can hear Rick's voice. "Where are your parents?" The kids don't answer. Ethan holds what looks like a plastic toy gun, but in the shaky reflection of the glass door, you can clearly see a steel barrel beneath the chipped paint. That single moment unsettles me more than the zombies outside. Why? Because it proves these children weren't just surviving, they were performing. They understood deception. Later reports from scavengers described finding 2 coffee mugs on the counter the next morning, both still warm to the touch, as if guests had spent the night. But no bodies were ever recovered. The only physical trace? A wide streak of dried blood smeared across the tiled floor, leading toward the back door, and ending abruptly at the threshold. As if something, or someone, had dragged the couple outside. I imagine what it must have been like inside that house. The laughter of Lily echoing down the hall. The whisper of Marlene reassuring herself that the children were harmless. And then, silence. Survivors in nearby neighborhoods later claimed they heard a woman scream just past midnight, quickly cut off. One man swore he saw shadows thrashing against the curtained windows before everything went dark. Personally, I can't stop asking myself, did Ethan plan this from the very beginning? Was the innocent act with the toy gun just a lure, buying time until the house itself swallowed its prey? It's a chilling thought, because it means the danger in Pine Hollow wasn't only outside, moaning in the streets. Sometimes the most terrifying predators wear the face of a child. And that night was only the beginning, because the next arrival wasn't a greedy scavenger or a desperate thief, it was a soldier, trained to survive, and he was about to uncover secrets buried far deeper inside the villa. Let's step into the snow and meet Daniel Harper, the man who thought he could save them. One winter morning, security cameras from a nearby highway checkpoint captured a lone figure trudging through the snow. His name was Daniel Harper, a former U.S. Army Ranger. The kind of man who'd seen battlefields most of us couldn't even imagine. He carried an empty M4 slung across his chest and a limp in his step, as if every mile was carved into his bones. Survivors later testified that he had been searching for his wife, missing since the early days of the outbreak. He wasn't looking for food, not for shelter, he was looking for answers. According to a report filed by a scavenger who stumbled upon his camp, Daniel left behind scraps of military rations, neat rows of sharpened sticks, and even a crude perimeter alarm made of tin cans. This was a man who knew survival. But when he reached Pine Hollow and crossed paths with Ethan, something shifted. Witnesses recall hearing a muffled shot. Not lethal, tranquilizer. The boy had knocked out a soldier. Just think about that for a second. A 12-year-old outmaneuvered a trained ranger. When Daniel woke up inside the villa, he found himself staring at the strangest form of survival ingenuity, a treadmill wired into an old generator, powering the lights. The children had turned physical exhaustion into electricity. To me, that's both heartbreaking and brilliant, a reminder of how kids adapt when the world no longer plays fair. But the real horror lay in what Daniel uncovered next. In the basement, he discovered a locked steel door. Behind it, the walls were shredded with claw marks, some deep enough to gouge the concrete. Forensic analysts who later examined fragments of skin caught in the grooves said the DNA didn't match any known living person. Half human, half something else. Ethan finally confessed. His father, once a government biologist, had experimented with a virus meant to repair failing hearts. Instead, it created what Daniel would come to know as the special infected humans who healed faster, fought harder, but carried the curse of losing control in fits of primal rage. And this is where my own unease grows. Because every survivor's account agrees on one detail. Ethan didn't tell this story with fear. He told it with composure, like a boy explaining his bedtime routine. That kind of calm in the face of monstrosity makes me wonder, did Ethan still see himself as a child? Or had he already accepted that he was something else entirely? But Daniel's discovery was only the beginning, because once you peel back the first layer of horror, the true cost of survival begins to show. And for Ethan, that cost was about to tear his family apart. Which brings us to the darkest nights of Pine Hollow, when frenzy and survival collided. Every night in Pine Hollow ended the same way. Ethan shackling his own wrists and ankles with rusted handcuffs before lying down to sleep. Daniel later told investigators that he had never seen a child so calm about binding himself, as if it were as ordinary as brushing his teeth. But the security footage recovered from the villa's basement shows why. Around 2 a.m., the boy's body would convulse. His breathing turned guttural, and then, he would roar. The walls already bore the proof, deep gouges, fresh each morning, clawed into the steel like something trying to escape. Forensic teams who entered the villa after it was abandoned reported discovering strands of hair fused into the metal, along with small pools of saliva that tested positive for human DNA but contained abnormal protein chains. Unlike anything in public medical records. To me, this isn't just science, it's terror made visible. Because it means the virus didn't just heal Ethan's body, it rewrote it. Daniel once admitted in a survivor's testimony that he sat outside Ethan's locked room one night, listening. It was the sound of an animal trying to tear itself apart.
Lily,
He said,
no.
And yet, in the morning,
Please,
Ethan would
Melanie.
emerge quietly,
No.
comb his sister's hair, and pour her a bowl of cereal like nothing had happened. That dissonance, between the ordinary and the monstrous, is what makes this story so haunting to me. But the real tragedy struck when Lily collapsed in the snow one evening. Clutching her chest, her heart, weak since birth, couldn't take the strain anymore. Daniel begged Melanie, who had returned by then, to consider infecting the girl with the same virus. He argued that it had saved Ethan, that it might be her only chance. Melanie refused. She knew the price too well. She had buried her husband after his failed transformation. The last security log of Pine Hollow captured Ethan in frenzy that night while Lily slipped away in her mother's arms. The timing was cruel. He was screaming inside his cell, unable to break free, unable to say goodbye. That's a detail that never leaves me. Imagine being trapped by your own chains while your sister breathes her last. Just a few feet away. And this is where survival cuts deepest. It wasn't zombies that broke this family. It was the very cure that was supposed to save them. But the night wasn't over. Because loss has a way of drawing enemies closer, and soon. The family's grief would collide with something far more dangerous than the dead. Next, we step into the siege of Pine Hollow. When the White Oak Militia came knocking. The final act of Pine Hollow began not with zombies, but with engines. Grainy drone footage recovered by FEMA shows 4 pickup trucks circling the cul-de-sac. Headlights off, men in heavy coats stepping out with rifles in hand. This was the White Oak Militia, led by Jonas White, a man obsessed with finding his runaway daughter. When his scouts found a blood-stained jacket near Pine Hollow, he became convinced the villa was hiding answers. Inside the house, Melanie stood guard with her pistol while Ethan reset the barricades. Forensic analysts later documented multiple boot prints around the perimeter, overlapping with smaller barefoot tracks, Lily's, frozen in the snow like a ghost of the child who was already gone. To me, that detail is the most heartbreaking. Her absence was still visible, even in footprints. Survivor testimony from one of White's men paints the moment vividly. The lights in the villa flickered. And then we heard something inside, metal snapping, chains rattling, and this howl, not human, not animal, something in between. That something was Daniel Harper. Knowing there was no other way to buy time, he cut his own throat, triggering the frenzy. The blood patterns found later tell the rest of the story. High arcs across the wallpaper, sprays of arterial red on the ceiling, fragments of bone embedded into plaster. White's militia didn't stand a chance. Daniel became a storm of claws and teeth, tearing through trained gunmen as if they were paper dolls. The chaos drew a horde of zombies from the nearby highway. What began as a siege ended as a massacre. And yet, in the middle of that storm, Melanie grabbed Ethan and fled into the night. The villa itself became a pyre, flames visible for miles. By morning, all that remained were ashes, charred rifles, and one man, Daniel, alive. But change. Eyewitnesses described him staggering from the ruins, clutching Lily's doll, eyes faintly glowing gold, not entirely human, not fully monster, but something caught in between. For me, this is the most chilling part of the Pine Hollow story, because it suggests survival in this new world doesn't belong to the strongest or the smartest. It belongs to those willing to surrender a piece of their humanity. And that's a truth none of us want to face. So what do you think? Were Ethan and Daniel victims of science gone wrong? Or the first glimpse of humanity's twisted future? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you believe. And if you want me to keep digging into hidden histories of survival and the dark corners of human resilience, give this video a like, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good scare. Because the story of Pine Hollow doesn't end in the ashes. It lingers, in every shadow, every whisper, and perhaps in the footsteps still echoing across America's forgotten suburbs.